Hi John, hey Jaguars. Soof, Sarah Weeks. Getting to near the end. This is chapters 16 and 17. More than a heart loves to beat. I could hardly wait for Heidi to wake up from her nap. I hadn't decided yet whether to come right out and tell her that I knew about the four-leaf clover or to reel her in a bit more slowly. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I went to my room and opened the door. Heidi was lying on the bed, but her eyes were open. "Sorry to bother you," I whispered. "I need to get my sweatshirt." "Come on in," she said. I was about to get up anyway. It was just an excuse I'd made up, but I went and pulled my sweatshirt out of the drawer. "This room brings back so many memories," Heidi said. "The first night I slept in here, I told your mother the sheets smelled like the sky." "What does sky smell like?" I asked, tapping my nose once, twice, 3 times. My tapping had gotten worse since Heidi had arrived. "Like this," she said, turning her face toward the pillow. "I think it's because Ruby hangs the sheets outside instead of putting them in the dryer." "I thought everybody did that," I said, tapping my elbows, first right and then left. Heidi smiled. "Not in Reno, they don't. And nobody there can make a pot roast as good as your mom's either. I don't know how she makes those carrots taste the way they do. I could eat a bucket of them." My mother would be home soon, and I didn't want to waste any more time talking about sheets and carrots. "If you had to guess where Duck might be, what would you say?" I asked, trying not to let on how excited I was. Heidi seemed a little surprised by the question. "Gosh, I don't know much about dogs." "Well, that doesn't matter. Just guess where he is." "Well, when Bernadette loses something, she always says, 'Dear Saint Anthony, please come around. Something's lost that must be found.'" I was running out of patience. It was time to set the hook. "Look," I said, "don't be mad, but I know about the four-leaf clover. I saw you put it in your pocket." Heidi pushed herself up on one elbow. "You saw that?" she said. My cheeks felt hot. "I'm sorry," I told her, "for spying on you, but I'm not sorry about the clover. I'm happy about that, because it means you can help me find Duck." "Oh," said Heidi, "I wondered why you were being so friendly all of a sudden." "I told you I was sorry," I said, reaching around to scratch my neck. I'd forgotten to turn my sweatshirt inside out before putting it on, and the tag was making me itch. "You're still going to help me find Duck, though, right?" "I would if I could, Aurora. Truly I would. But I'm not lucky anymore." I ran and grabbed the piggy bank off my shelf, shaking it until a quarter fell out. "Call it in the air," I said, tossing the coin and catching it on the back of my hand, the way my father always did when he told the story about Heidi guessing the 10 flips in a row. "I can't do that anymore," Heidi insisted. "Yes, you can," I said. "Just try." "Okay, heads." I lifted my hands up. "Yes!" I cried. I tossed the quarter again. "Tails?" Heidi guessed. I uncovered the quarter, but it was heads again. I flipped it 8 more times, but she only got it right once. "You're trying to trick me," I said. "You could do it if you wanted to." "No," she said, "I couldn't. I haven't been lucky for years. Not since blah, blah, blah," I interrupted. "I know what you're going to say, but that story isn't true." "What story?" "The one about you passing your luck along to my mother. Tell the truth. You didn't do that, did you?" "No," said Heidi, "I didn't." "See, I knew it. As soon as I saw the clover, I knew you hadn't given your luck away." "No," Heidi said, "I'm not lucky anymore. I didn't give it away. It went away. That clover doesn't mean anything." "Well, then why did you keep it?" I thought maybe it was a sign from Mama to let me know she was watching over me and the baby. I haven't felt lucky since the day she died. I love Bernadette with all my heart, but I miss my mother. I'm sorry, Aurora, I can't help you." She stood up. I threw myself face down on the bed. "I'm never going to find Duck now," I wailed. "He's never going to come back." The phone rang, and Heidi went to answer it. It was my mother calling to say that she'd gotten a flat tire and would be home later than she'd expected. Heidi didn't tell her I was upset. "Everything is fine, Ruby," I heard her say. "Don't worry. And don't worry about dinner either. I can make an omelet or we can eat leftovers. You know I never get tired of eating your pot roast, and neither does Roy." After she hung up, she came back in my room. "Listen," she said, "I may not be lucky anymore, but that doesn't mean I can't help you look for Duck." "Well, we've looked everywhere," I said, wiping my nose on my sleeve, "and put up a million flyers, too." "Everywhere is a pretty big place," she said. "What about the park? Have you looked there?" "We don't have any parks around here," I said. "Just a playground and the community garden, and they don't allow dogs in either of those places." "Well, what about dog friends? Maybe he went to visit someone he knows." "The only dog I can think of is a German Shepherd who used to live near Bartlett Lake. He and Duck would sniff each other sometimes, but I haven't seen him around the last few times we've gone fishing." "It's worth a try," said Heidi. "How far away is the lake?" "It's too far to walk." "Well, we could ride bikes if you'd have an extra one." I looked at Heidi's swollen middle. "Can you still ride a bike?" "The only thing I'm not allowed to do is horseback riding, which is fine with me since I don't know how to ride a horse anyway. Come on, let's go." I rode my bike and Heidi rode my mother's. It took us almost an hour to get there because we had to keep stopping so Heidi could rest. "What are you going to call your baby?" I asked during one of our pit stops. "Sophia," she said, "after Mama." "That's what we thought," I said. "Is Sophia a promising name?" Heidi smiled and scrunched up her nose. "How do you know about that?" she asked. "My mother remembers everything you ever said," I told her, "and so do I, even though I wasn't there." Paul and I both like the name Sophia, and we couldn't very well name the baby after his mother. Her name is Ethel. I had tried to stay mad at Heidi, but A, she was nicer than I'd expected, and B, she was helping me look for Duck. "I'm glad you're not going to name your baby Lindsay," I told her, "because I've never known anybody with that name that I liked." We rode a little bit farther and stopped again because Heidi was out of breath. "Paul rides his bike all the time," Heidi panted. "His calves are as thick as tree trunks." "Is that a good thing?" I asked. "Well, it's nice that he's strong," she said. "He's handy, too. Bernadette always has a long list of things she wants him to fix when we come over." "Well, why don't you and Paul live with Bernadette? She must be lonely living all by herself." "Hardly," Heidi laughed. "Bernadette's got a beau." "What's a beau?" I asked. "A boyfriend. His name is Harrison, and he plays the saxophone in a jazz band." "I didn't know old ladies could have boyfriends," I said. "Ooh, you better not let Bernie hear you call her an old lady," Heidi warned. "She's got more energy than most people. She and Harrison are taking ballroom dancing lessons." "I thought she didn't go outside." "That changed after Mama died," Heidi explained. "Like your luck," I said. Heidi nodded. "Anyway, Harrison's teaching Bernie how to play the saxophone too. Now that's something I don't miss. It sounds like a dying moose when she blows into it." We passed the house where the German Shepherd used to live, but the windows were all boarded up and there was no sign of him or Duck. "Well, maybe we should look down by the water," I suggested. "He likes to go in the boat with us when we go fishing." We left our bikes by the side of the road and started down the dirt path to the lake. "Wait," said Heidi. "Let's say it together." She took hold of my hands and we closed our eyes and recited. "Dear Saint Anthony, please come around. Something's lost that must be found." I guess St. Anthony wasn't listening, though, because we called and called, but Duck never came. "We should start back soon," said Heidi. "Your mom's probably home by now, and I told her in the note that we'd be back home in an hour." "Can't we stay a little while longer?" I said. "Please?" Heidi started walking up the path. "I'll wait for you up there," she said, "by the bikes. But we really need to go, or your mom will be worried." I walked over to the edge of the water near the rowboat and closed my eyes. "Dear St. Anthony, please come around. Something's lost that must be found," I whispered. "Dear St. Anthony, please come around." "Aurora!" Heidi called. "Come quick!" I was sure from the sound of her voice that she'd found something. Maybe a paw print or Duck's red collar, or maybe, just maybe, "Duck!" I hollered. "Duck!" I dashed up the path and around the bend where I almost tripped over Heidi. She was sitting on the ground with her legs sticking straight out in front of her like a doll. "Did you find him?" I cried. "Did you find Duck?" "It's too early," she said, and there was a funny look on her face. "What are you talking about? What's too early?" "The baby," she said. "It's coming." Chapter 17. More Than a Cradle Loves to Rock. I tried to convince Heidi to let me ride home to get help, or at least go out on the road to try to flag someone down, but she was in a panic. "Don't leave me," she begged. "I can't do this by myself." I tried to get her to stand up, but she said it hurt too much to walk. Then I noticed the front of her dress was wet, and I got really scared. "Don't worry," Heidi told me. "That's perfectly normal." But I was still scared. Since Heidi wasn't able to move, I tried to make her as comfortable as I could. I gathered some leaves and pine needles to make a bed and covered it with the tarp from the rowboat. Then I took off my sweatshirt and rolled it up to make a pillow for her. Heidi was sweating and moaning, and sometimes when the pains got really bad, she screamed. "Tell me what to do," I said. "I don't know how to help you." "Just stay with me," she pleaded. "I will," I promised. I held her hand and didn't let go, and when she cried, I cried too. The pains were getting closer and closer together, and then all of a sudden Heidi's head rolled back and she started breathing funny. "Done, done, done, Heidi, shh," she said. "Done, done, done, Heidi, shh." I knew that was something Heidi's mama had said. Then Heidi started saying things that didn't make any sense at all. "Heidi, Det, hello," she moaned. "What?" "Soof, shh, tea." "I'm sorry, Heidi," I told her. "I don't understand. Are you thirsty? I can get you some water for the lake, but it might not be clean." Heidi shook her head and moaned again. "Out more. Back soon." That's when I realized what she was doing. She was saying the words from the list on the cupboard door. Heidi knew them by heart, and so did I. "Go, good, again," I said. Heidi looked at me and nodded. Her eyes looked even bluer than they had before, like there was light shining through them. "Blue, pretty, now," she said. There were 23 words on the list. Heidi and I went back and forth, saying them to each other in order, and when we were finished, we'd start all over again. And after a while, she was too exhausted to say them anymore, so I said them for her, because I knew she needed her mama with her now more than ever before. The baby was coming soon, but I didn't know what I was going to do when it did, and that's when I heard someone coming down the path. "Mama!" Heidi called out, but it wasn't Heidi's mama, it was mine. "Aurora!" she called. "Where are you?" "Over here, Mom!" I shouted. "Hurry!" It's a good thing she got there when she did, because things happened pretty quickly after that. My mother called for an ambulance, but the baby clearly wasn't going to wait. "Do you feel like you're ready to push?" my mother asked. Heidi nodded and put her chin to her chest. "Get behind her, sweetie," she told me, "and help her sit up a little." I crouched behind Heidi, and she leaned against my legs. I couldn't remember where we'd left off on the list, so I started again from the beginning. "Heidi, Det, hello, Soof, shh, tea, out, more." "Oh, you're doing great," my mother said. "Both of you. Couple more pushes and we'll be there." "Back soon, go, good, again, blue, pretty, now." "Deep breath," my mother said. "Hot, kiss, bad, no, uh-oh, ow, done." It seemed too perfect that Heidi's baby would be born just as I reached the end of the list, but that's what happened. "So be it," I said, as that beautiful little girl slipped into my mother's waiting hands. "Done, done, done, Heidi." Shh. That's the end of chapter 17.